Hello everyone, and welcome to a plant walk video for Level 3 of the Native Landscape Certification Program for the Houston area. My name is Mary Spolier, and I'm with the Houston chapter of the Native Plant Society of Texas, and behind the camera is Scott Buckle from the Clear Lake chapter. Not only is Scott our camera person, he's also our creative director and producer for this video. We are filming at the Houston Arboretum and Nature Center, which is a 155-acre urban nature sanctuary located at the western edge of Memorial Park. The Houston Arboretum and Nature Center is a private nonprofit, and its mission is to provide education about the natural environment to people of all ages and to protect and enhance the Arboretum as a sanctuary for native plants and animals. In addition to many educational programs, the Arboretum offers 5 miles of walking trails through 4 ecosystem types: woodland, wetland, prairie, and savanna. The land that the Arboretum sits on is of significant historical and cultural importance to Houston. When the U.S. entered World War I in 1917, it needed to build training facilities for its troops. Houston was awarded one of 16 campsites, and construction of Camp Logan soon began. The government leased a tract of over 9,000 acres from the Hogg family, and the developed Camp Logan covered 3,000 acres. What is now Memorial Park is where the buildings were, and the Arboretum is where the animals were kept. To this day, there remains a small watering hole called Mule Pond. Camp Logan was the training ground for the 8th Illinois Infantry, an African American unit. Most of the men were sent to fight in France, and many were awarded for their valor. In 1924, the Hogg family sold 1,500 acres of Camp Logan to the city of Houston for the creation of Memorial Park, dedicated to the memory of soldiers who lost their lives in World War I. Back to the history of the Arboretum. In 1951, City Council carved out a piece of land from Memorial Park to serve as a nature sanctuary, as proposed by local ecologist and educator Robert A. Vines. In 1967, ground was broken for a nature center building, which was one of the first nature education facilities for children in Texas. The Arboretum provides services to over 400,000 visitors annually and provides nature education for more than 10,000 children annually. As a result of 2 major natural disasters, Hurricane Ike in 2008 and the severe drought in 2011, and having outgrown the existing educational center, the Houston Arboretum embarked on a master plan to expand facilities and to restore historic ecological conditions. Today, there are both managed and naturalized landscape areas. Rather than show plants individually, we'd like to show you little groups of plants so that you can see what plants look like when combined with others. We're filming in August, and it is hot, hot, hot. But because of the heat, we're seeing a lot of pollinators, and that makes it all worthwhile. We hope you enjoy our insect distractions as much as we did. Inside the Nature Center is something pretty cool. This is a display that the Botany Battalion does every week. On Friday, they go out and collect samples of plants that are blooming. And so you'll find some that we have in class. And here's the late flowering bone set. There's the sumac. Lots of other things here to have a look at that you'll recognize from the various NLCP classes. And they also have a few invasives over in this corner. So be sure to check this out when you come to the Arboretum. Here we have the late flowering bone set, Eupatorium serotinum. It is just starting to bloom. It's a great pollinator plant in the fall, and it has a couple of friends nearby that you'll recognize. Here's Turk's cap, also blooming, and Yaupon behind it. Oh, and one more thing about the bone set. If it gets taller than you'd like, you can clip it and it will bush out. So here we have American holly, Ilex opaca. It's one of the canopy trees on our list, And what's nice about this one is that it grows more in height than it does in breadth. So it's a large tree that you could put in a relatively small area if you need to. It's on its way to making berries. They're green right now, but they'll turn bright red as the fall wears on, providing winter food for wildlife. Okay. And underneath, we have more Turk's cap. And we're watching a hoverfly on this camelina. It's a relative to the spiderwort that we have in our class. And this is a dusky-winged hoverfly. And it's an important pollinator. Flies as a group are important pollinators. Did you know that it's flies that pollinate chocolate? And here we have elephant's foot, Elephantopus carolinianus. This is a low-growing plant that you could actually use for a tall ground cover if you wanted. It's on its way to, this is a bloom stalk, it's on its way to producing its tiny, tiny little blue flowers. I'm not really sure why it's called elephant's foot, but one thought is perhaps because of the basal leaves and the shape of the basal leaves. Fall bloomer, makes kind of a little cloud of tiny blue flowers. Here is coral bean, Erythrina herbacea. Has really interesting shaped leaves. It does have tiny little thorns, so be aware of that. It makes bright red beans, and you would want to be aware that those beans are toxic, so it might not be the best plant for a children's garden. The flowers are really great at attracting hummingbirds on their migrations, fall migration. Here we have eastern red cedar, Juniperus virginiana. It's a tall, growing, evergreen tree that makes dark blue berries in the fall and winter that wildlife really appreciate. There are actually 2 subspecies in our area. Variety virginiana is the one most likely to be found for sale, and it's more found in the northern part of Harris County and beyond, East Texas. And there's a coastal variety that you might find in the counties immediately bordering the coast. And oh look, here's a little blue dasher that just landed. And next to the cedar we have a plant from level 1. It's the arrowwood viburnum, Viburnum dentatum. And it's showing its berries that are developing, also dark blue berries that wildlife like. We found some Carolina snail seed close to the trail. It has slightly fuzzy leaves, sort of triangular shaped. It does not have thorns. And we're going to look at a smilax later that has similar shaped leaves but no thorns. So the interesting thing about this plant is a couple of things. It makes bright red berries, which are good food for wildlife, and the seeds in those berries look like tiny, tiny coiled snails, and that's how it gets its name. There's also a really pretty little moth called the moonseed moth that hosts on this plant. Okay. And over here we have Virginia creeper. 5 leaves in a palmate arrangement, like the palm of your hand. Also good for wildlife, makes berries. It's deciduous, and you'll get some fall color from this too. This is shining sumac, Rus copalina. It's a little far off the trail, so we won't go for a closer look. This is a female. It bears, the plants are separately male and female. The female produces these. The winged feather-like leaves turn a brilliant red in autumn, dense red clusters of fruit. And this is our milkweed, Asclepias perennis. It's a really great little milkweed, blooms a lot, repeat blooms. Here's a seed pod starting to form, and it will be, the seeds are pretty big. They don't have the fluff that the green milkweed does. The great thing about them is they're very easy to germinate. All you do is lay them down on some soil. They do not have to be cold stratified. Another thing I love about this plant is the the buds are pinkish before they open. And this is, of course, the host plant for the monarch, queen, and viceroy butterflies. This is Shumard red oak, Quercus shumardii. This is a large tree, can get up to 120 feet in height when it is in rich, moist bottomlands. Probably not quite as tall here in the Houston area. It is never found in large groves, but usually occurs singly and widely spaced. What I really like about it is the shape of the leaves, and they turn a really pretty color of red in the fall. Here we have Carolina buckthorn, Frangula caroliniana. It's a nice little understory tree, gets to be about 15 feet tall. Has pretty red berries. It's deciduous and is already starting to turn colors for the fall. This is loblolly pine, Pinus taeda. It's the most numerous pine tree in Texas. It grows in low wet areas and has thick bark, which makes it very resistant to fire. It's the fastest growing of all southern pines, and because of that is the most widely planted pine tree in Texas for timber purposes. It's fun to watch it as it grows over time. It starts out as a little bottle brush and then grows a little taller, still with a very bushy look to it, and eventually maturing into an adult tree where the lower limbs drop off and branching out at the top. The pine needles are carried in bundles of 3, and the pine cones are prickly. They're not smooth like other cones. But that doesn't seem to deter the squirrels. They eat it anyway. Here we have another one of our small trees. This is farkleberry, also called sparkleberry, Vaccinium arboreum. It's a lovely small tree. I love how the leaves are shaped, and in the fall when it starts losing its leaves, The leaves turn kind of, they have a lot of kind of a lavender in them before turning completely red. Another plant here grouped together, this is smilax. It can be confused with, it looks kind of like snail seed, but it has thorns, so that's how you tell the difference. And what I'm really excited to show you today is this yellow passion vine, Passiflora lutea. Notice it's got the 3 lobes, just like the incarnata does. And what's really cool about this is that it has made berries. So we have some green ones, this is a mature berry, and this is also the host for fritillary butterflies, including Gulf fritillary and variegated fritillary, and wouldn't you know it, there's one in there. I'm standing beside Missouri ironweed, Vernonia missourica. It's in the aster family, fall bloomer, another great pollinator plant for the fall. And I'm going to come over here to talk about a couple of companion plants. And the ironweed has a couple of friends here. We've got rattlesnake master, Orangium yuccifolium, that you learn about in level 2. We also have swamp sunflower. This is Helianthus angustifolia, which you learn about in the birds class. And over here we found a really cool bug. We found an interesting bug here on the rattlesnake master. It is a camelooper. It's in the emerald family. It will become an emerald moth, a little green moth about that big. And what's interesting about it is that as a caterpillar, it will bite off little pieces of the plant that it's feeding on and stick them to its back, and that's how it disguises itself. And on another rattlesnake master over here, we found a delta flower scarab, a really intricately patterned, I think in the beetle family. Here we have one of our invasives. This is Lantana camara, or large leaf lantana. You can't tell the invasive from the non-invasive by the flower because in the invasive it's in the nursery trade in all colors. So this is a typical coloration. They can be all yellow, they can be yellow and orange or red. What tells them apart is the leaves. On the large leaf lantana, the leaves are quite large. And notice all of the little sharp teeth. Lots of little small, sharply pointed teeth. On the native lantana, it has many fewer teeth, and they're not sharp, they're rounded. So you'll have a smaller leaf, fewer teeth that are rounded on the native. We greatly appreciate the support of the Houston Arboretum and Nature Center for the making of this video and for their support of the mission of the Native Plant Society of Texas. We hope you'll come and explore the Houston Arboretum and enjoy its educational programs.